Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another episode of Scotch Sunday here on Drums and Drams. My name's Cameron, and today I'm gonna be taking a look at a very old single malt Scotch whiskey. That's gonna be this Glenallachie 21 year. It's batch number 5, which is the most recent release of this expression. It's non-chill filtered, no added color, and it's bottled at a cask strength of 49.2% ABV. So it pretty much checks all the boxes that whiskey enthusiasts like to see. And it does have a very dark color, and that's because it's aged in a combination of PX and Oloroso sherry casks. The last thing that I want to say before we get straight into the nose of this whiskey just has to do with the price tag. So this is not a cheap whiskey by any means. It's going to be about $400 to $450, I think, if you find it at the right price. I believe I paid $420 for this, but by the time it made it here, because I did order it from an online store, by the time it hit my doorstep, it was about $450 all included. And so part of the goal of this video is not just to, find out if this sherry bomb, which you can assume it's going to be based on the color, not just to find out if it's a tasty whiskey and it's good and you want to drink it, but also to find out if it's truly worth that price tag, or if it's going to be a situation where you can maybe find an alternative product at half the price, maybe a few years younger, a few proof points lower as well. But if you can get close to this experience for a much lower price, maybe that's going to be the way to go, or maybe this is going to be a truly special whiskey. I don't know. Enough blabbering here at the beginning. Let's go to the nose now. Glenallachie 21 year batch 5 and see what we get. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is speak directly to all of the sherry bomb lovers out there. If you're chasing down your first fill Oloroso, first fill PX, independent bottling at cask strength, and you just want that intensely concentrated kind of sherried profile from all your whiskeys, this is gonna be right up your alley. And listen, I'm right there with you. I love a sherry bomb, even though sometimes sherry bombs aren't the most complex whiskeys. They often can be a little overdone, which gives you a lot of flavor, but maybe not a lot of sophistication. I don't really care about that sometimes, because sometimes you just need to have a massive, powerhouse of a, intensely flavored whiskey. And straight away on the nose, that feels like what you're gonna get out of this batch 5 Glenallachie 21. So what's interesting about it is not only that it has this level of, intensity and this concentration of sherry, but it's that we've kind of moved past the red fruit character that you sort of come to expect from a lot of sherry finished products. Like, I think sometimes you expect a lot of raisin or kind of like dry red fruit, sometimes even a little bit of fresh red fruit. But this has almost moved past that. It's so cooked down and bittersweet and saturated that I'm actually picking up more of like this dark chocolate, baklava, coffee cake, gingerbread, molasses, like these really, really dark notes in the whiskey. And so I think it's interesting because it kind of gives you what you expect, and then it kind of gives you a little bit more than what you expect. And I don't know if it's for the better necessarily. I think it's just different, and we'll find out more about it. I'm gonna go back to the nose here. But first impression on this is interesting. Knee-jerk reaction is like, yeah, hell yeah, this is gonna be awesome. And then right afterwards, I'm thinking, maybe this is a little bit different. Yeah, so after going back to the nose, I'm gonna kind of continue on with the point I was just making about how interesting and how different this profile is. What's funny about it is that I'm already sort of over the notes that I just talked about. So here I am going on and on about how this has moved past the red fruits and it's really into these bittersweet coffee cake, baklava, all the stuff I just said. But already I've forgotten all about that stuff, because all I can smell when I go back to the nose after I've kind of acclimated my olfactory system to all that stuff, all I can smell is this like heavy, savory, again, slightly bitter kind of profile. So I get a lot of mushroom in here, a lot of kind of like forest floor, kind of damp earthiness. And these are notes that I would not typically associate with a Scotch. I'm thinking more like red wine territory. I'm also picking up a little bit of like a torched orange peel, some fresh ginger. I know I already said gingerbread, but a little fresh ginger in here too. And actually kind of like a black tea note. So it's somewhat herbal, definitely heavy into the savory kind of notes. And I think it's a little bit all over the place. So A+ for complexity, absolutely. But for me, there's a lot to love. There's also a lot not to love in this whiskey, depending on what your preferred profile is. And so I'm going to be interested now to see how this comes across on the palate. If it is that complex, if it feels segmented, if it feels like it's, cohesive. Let's find out. Here we go. Cheers. Yeah, this is definitely a quirky whiskey. Let's put it that way. I think quirky is probably the best way to describe this. So it did not start the way that I thought it was gonna start on the palate. This hits you up front with a ton of those like savory herb notes. I feel like I'm cooking some sort of like heavily seasoned dish. I'm like Italian herbs and different things. So it starts off with this herbal thing, but then when I would have expected it to sort of sink and get heavy and very, very dark with a lot of those notes that I talked about on the nose, it actually lifts. So right after the initial hit on the palate, it lifts into this like strawberry ice cream, candied strawberry sort of thing, which is very unexpected. And as it works its way back and starts to develop, that's when the fruit gets a little bit darker. I get a lot of like pomegranate. I feel like I'm eating like pomegranate seeds. That's sort of like the mid-palate experience. Maybe a little cranberry in there too. But then as we get into the finish, it's a very dry whiskey. It's like bone dry, very tannic. I get like that black tea dryness. If you've ever had black tea with not a lot of water, no sugar added, it sucks all the moisture out of your mouth. This has that same kind of experience. It gets into those more mushroomy, savory, and sort of coffee cake, dark chocolate things, but that's closer to the finish. So this is a wild ride of a whiskey, especially on first sip. I just got to do another sip. I don't know what to think of this. I think this is going to be 2, 3, 4 sips in this review to continue digging in. Here we go. Back to the palate. All right, so after the second sip now, this whiskey is sort of going down a path that I really just don't like very much. It's extremely sour. It's very tannic and very bitter. It's so drying, and I am getting more fruit now. I am getting a little bit more also of those kind of like darker, more molassesy, again, bittersweet dessert notes. And I'm getting maybe a little bit less of that herbal punch up front. But now all of the herbal notes and the savory notes are so concentrated on my palate and they linger. That's definitely happening in the finish. It's just not really a pleasant drinking experience. Like I don't want to come back for more. It feels like it's challenging my palate, which is a good thing. Like it's good to challenge your palate with different styles of whiskey and stuff that's not even good. Like I'm not saying this is a bad whiskey, but it's good sometimes to drink bad whiskey because it helps you appreciate the good whiskey, and it also helps sort of develop your palate even further. But this is a whiskey to me that feels like it needs to be paired with something for it to shine. It reminds me, kind of like I was saying a little bit earlier, of a very tannic and very kind of earthy red wine that needs food. Like this feels like it needs something to help bring something else out of it and to pair with it and kind of offset some of the negative qualities of it. So maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just because I don't want a whiskey that has this much dryness, this much of a tannic profile and this much savoriness to it. And again, maybe that's just me. If you like those notes, especially if you're big into like American single malt, I think you might really enjoy this because this also has kind of a nearly hoppy, almost resinous kind of thing in the finish. And I get that from a lot of American single malts. You might like this if this is your preferred profile, but for me, it's not just the profile, it's also the drinking experience. I think 2 wrongs don't make a right in this instance. And so I don't need to do a third sip of this. I think the price for what this is, it's too high at $400, $450. I think this is a definite pass. If I had to rate this whiskey today, honestly, I'm not even in the 80s. And I hate to say that because it's 21 years old. It's a sherry bomb. It's what I want to love. But for me, I think this is going to be more of like a 79. I think this is a 79. It's not breaking into that very good territory for me. It's not bad, but it's just not necessarily my cup of tea. And I think you can go a lot further with $450 than this one bottle of Glenallachie. I wanted to love it. Didn't turn out that way. So guys, let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, and let me know in the comment section, especially if you've tried this batch 5 or any of the other Glenallachie 21-year batches. Am I kind of on my own here, or are other people saying the same thing? I'm not the biggest Scotch drinker anymore, but I do still love, enjoying a glass of Scotch here and there. And it's fun to taste them on the channel and really approach them with a fresh palate. But for me, I feel like I could probably find an 18-year sherry finished Scotch that's gonna come close to this. Maybe even like a 14-year independent bottling that's gonna be $150. That's gonna do more for me and have a better, more enjoyable and less tannic drinking experience than this whiskey. So that's it. Thank you guys. Cheers. And I will see you soon here on Drums and Drams.